I said, look, Aunt Laura, and everybody has an Aunt Laura, I think. But I said, Aunt Laura, I don't care what you eat. I said, you could have a basket of dead baby heads, just, munch away on it. I don't care. And she's like, oh, how could you say that? I'm like, you're asking me my opinion about, the cut up pieces of ass that you're eating. What did you expect me to say? Like, I really don't give a fuck, but is it gross? Yeah, man, you took a cow, you cut part of its ass off, you're chopping this shit up. Like, I don't care. Just like if you ate like a basket of baby heads, I would think it's kind of fucked up, but whatever.
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians, talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. Hope you had a killer weekend. I most certainly did. This Vox and Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal are Montreal's premier metal promoter, and trust me when I say this, if you are ever in Montreal and you're looking for a killer gig to go to, well, Heavy Montreal will have you covered. I'm beyond stoked to have Heavy Montreal behind the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I'd just like to ask you to follow the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I would love if you would tell one of your friends about the podcast. You can let them know that I have over 460 episodes where I sit down with some of the world's best metal musicians to talk all about their lives and music, and we also share amazing craft beers. If you would encourage one of your music-loving craft beer enthusiast friends to become a brand new Vox and Hops head, that would be something that I would truly appreciate. This week on the podcast, I'm very stoked to be with Bill Muir, also known as Sergeant Vegan. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 465.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm very stoked to be with Bill Muir. Sergeant Vegan, very, very cool person that I followed on Instagram, someone that I been checking out. You hit me up, I hit you up. We wanted to connect. Something that I don't necessarily talk a lot about on the podcast, and is a big part of my life and has been since 2017, is that I am vegan. It's not something that I necessarily am as much of an activist as some musicians are. Definitely not as much of an activist as Bill is here. But it's an important part of my life. And when you tour the world and you go all around and you realize that it is possible, and everybody always asks me that question, how do you do it? Isn't it so hard? And hypothetically, some places is a little bit more complex than others, but you always find something to eat, and you can survive many days on eating whatever you want. So a long intro just to say, hey, what's up, Bill?
Hey, what's going on? And I couldn't agree more. I recently got back from a trip to Australia. Amazing. It was my 49th country.
Nice.
I've been vegan for coming on 32 years. Wow. And every country that I've been to, I've been vegan in. I would say most difficult might be Afghanistan,
okay,
or potentially America in the 90s. I don't know.
It's I can imagine.
It's kind of a toss-up.
So I wasn't vegan at that point, but touring now in the States is ungodly easy. There's options everywhere for anything and everywhere. Any Walmart or anything is Whole Foods or anything. I can only imagine how difficult it was back in the day when people didn't even understand what tofu was.
Yeah. And on an annoying note, so recently coming from Australia, a lot of our fast food joints that have mediocre or no vegan options here, hey, are we keeping it clean?
No, you can say whatever the fuck you want. Yeah.
Are fucking amazing. So Burger King in Australia, for some reason, they didn't get the license to call Burger King there. It's called Hungry Jack's.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, it's Burger King. So Hungry Jack's has a full vegan menu.
Really?
To include basically a vegan Whopper that beats the balls off any shit you will find here, which is just crazy because I live in LA, but if I could choose a $8 Hungry Jack vegan Whopper, or choose to go to some highfalutin bullshit here, I would choose go back to Australia and eat Hungry Jack's. Krispy Kreme donuts. I think you guys have them in Australia.
We do Canada. Have them up here in Canada, but they are not vegan as of yet.
So they have vegan flavors in Australia. 7-Eleven has vegan lattes for less than $2 American.
Wow. Okay. So Australia is ahead of us in the vegan inclusion factor.
I think part of what it is, annoyingly, is that unlike Australia, where it's just, hey, do you want to do something better for the climate? Maybe eat less animals, do something better for your health? Yes or no? If you do, great. If not, great, whatever. Here in America, it's become some kind of political thing, I guess, tied to that. So I recently had a video on Instagram and Facebook that got a lot of hate. And it really wasn't directed toward anyone, but for some reason, mostly probably the Red Hat MAGAs came out just with their pitchforks, just super angry. And it's like, dude, none of us care. Like, eat meat, like, you know, have a baby and put it on a fucking spit and eat your own baby. Like, I could give a fuck. Like, I'm just saying that torturing and raping animals is some dubious shit at best. And we don't need to do it. But as far as like having friends that are not vegan, I have plenty of friends who aren't vegan. This is just one of a bazillion topics in your life which you talk about or don't. Like the band Samhain. Some people love them. Some people don't. If you don't like Samhain, I have about 700 million other bands we could talk about or listen to. You know what I mean? As long as there's something for me to eat, if we go out, I'm cool. If you go to a not a single thing, including the French fries isn't vegan kind of place, that's fucking bullshit. But if we go somewhere where everybody gets a burger and everyone's happy, I give a fuck what someone else does. You know what I mean? It's part of that, like, you have to do exactly what I say or it sucks. Like, I guess lack of freedom that is something in my country that I feel is kind of ridiculous. It's this idea that everyone's an individual, but if you're not the kind of individual I am, then
it's true. I was going to say that in a country that's so prone on having its freedom, they're not very open to people having freedom that's not their freedom.
Exactly. And part of punk rock and hardcore and metal is about that, the ability to be yourself, to be the best you, and to be whatever you want it to be, not whatever some other person's idea of what you know, someone in music is, or whatever rebellion is. Like, you know, be you. Yeah, it's all some silly shit.
No, I love it. I love it. At Vox and Hops, let's rewind. It's Vox and Hops. I typically hang out with my metal friends who talk about their lives and music while drinking craft beers, but just doesn't fit for you. So what are you going to be drinking today? What have you been sipping on so far there, Bill?
Well, thank you very much. I have pulled a Liquid Death out of the refrigerator. I feel the Liquid Death crushed an idea. It is making sparkly water with a minute amount of flavor cool again. Fucking skull on it. I mean, for straight edge kids, this shit is awesome. And you're not straight edge, but you're at a bar and you're
driving. You want to take it easy. It looks cool. It feels good. It tastes good. They definitely hit a full market that probably, as they like pitched the whole thing to everyone, investors hypothetically, they were like, this is not going to work, but it totally works. On my side, I am drinking something I haven't had in a while, but since I haven't had a sober-esque episode in a while. So this is Cryptopsy's collab with Pitch Black North, the satanic tea company from Calgary, Alberta. It's their Nun So Vile, which is a play on words, a joke around Cryptopsy's Nun So Vile record. And this is a lavender black tea with lots of hops, because anything I'm involved in always has some hops in it. Shout out to the whole crew over there. And you should definitely go check out Pitch Black North. What does he call it? The Satanic Tea is the name of his band, and he's been pushing that a lot, Dominic, recently. I did a song with them called Human Tea, if I remember correctly, and it's a banger, and they're touring, and he's putting a lot of energy into that. And I haven't seen much more about tea, but I do love this in my very cool Vox and Hops Thirsty Thursday glass, which I've never showcased on the podcast. A gift from the Thirsty Thursday gang to me at my birthday, I want to say it is. Cheers. Hell yeah. So to take me to these moments where, and this, I didn't have this written down, but as you brought it up, it came to me. When you put out these posts, because you are very, very an open pro-vegan activist on social media, when you get the knee-jerk reaction of the opposite people to your post, what is your mindset as you wake up and you open your Instagram, let's say, and there's hundreds of comments, hypothetically, hundreds of negative where they're just tearing you apart? What is your first reaction?
Man, what fucking losers. Because here's the thing, and Just about a recent post. There was a vegan restaurant that decided to become an unvegan restaurant. So because they were failing, but
Probably.
my annoyance with them was not that they needed to switch gears. It was they were so heavily invested in trying to make money off the vegan community and like talking about how all, the whole reason for their existence is saving animals. And, if you're a good vegan and if you care about animals, that you'll support us. And all their stuff was very inflated price wise. And it was mediocrely okay. I don't remember it being amazing, but I'm not going to talk shit. I think it was okay food. But then the turnaround that they were doing this and saying it was for the animals. And now they're trying to pretend that them serving animals is also for the animals. Like, I had a joke that this place, Sage Bistro, was saving the animals, but so they could eat them later. Which, here's the thing. I get my Omni friends, like, don't give a shit about it. I get it. Don't give a shit about it. My problem is more like lying to people, and
especially to the vegan community. If you're catering, because there's definitely like a high trend of veganism and restaurants and more things opening, and they do charge a premium. It's sometimes I'll make I cook a lot at home. When you're a vegan, it's something that you learn to do. You got to cook a lot, and it's a good thing to cook a lot. Whole foods. I aspire to live a whole foods vegan lifestyle, which for people listening is I try not to eat very many transformed foods. I eat things that are like real, not prepackaged made foods, and it's something that I've done with my family. So when I finish making something, we often sit there and be like, man, if we went to a vegan restaurant, they would charge us, $20 for that. Because it's inflated pricing for vegan food. It's incredibly high because there's a market for it, and there's sort of a thought that people will pay more because it is vegan. So I imagine that restaurant tried to do that, and it just failed. And then what they should have done, if they were smart, was just close the whole goddamn thing and then open it again under a new name. But I see what you're saying with it being like a almost slap in the face to the vegan community.
It's not almost, it exactly is a slap in the face. And they're basically like, well, we said that we were about trying to make the world a better place, but by that we mean we just don't care. We're about money. Look, that's why I will support, like I had mentioned, Hungry Jack or Krispy Kreme, and which are not vegan businesses but have a vegan option. They're not lying to you. They're saying, hey, we figured we can make something that's delicious to make money off you, and I give them money and they give me the product. And they're not pretending that they're saving the planet, or they're not pretending that the money's going towards some charity cause. That's fine. Because a lot of the comments are like, business is business. Like I explained in the video, no, motherfucker, their whole point. None of the people, I'm sure, except for the vegans, had actually been to this place. They're just there to be assholes, which I get. I mean, and it's weird to actually be in that sphere where, grown-ass men will be on Instagram, find something that has nothing to do whatever the fuck they're into. Like, for example, I like metal, I like punk, I like hardcore. And, do I like popular music a little bit? Maybe. But, I don't know. I'm trying to think of if Miley Cyrus had a comeback album, would she find a comment from me on it? Like, no. Like, if I liked it, didn't like it, like, I wouldn't engage in it. So having people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, basically losers on social media who don't know anything about the ethics of it, don't care purposely, to then troll you is just kind of, more than anything, sad. Like, I would never go on their pages. Like, granted, they only have like 100 followers, and one guy, it's just a picture of him as a bodybuilder. It's like, great, dude, you work out a lot. I mean, that would be awesome to have that much free time. Maybe you take roids, you look like you do, but if you don't and you're natural, that's awesome too. But, I would never, ever, and I'm sure you would not neither. And I think the average person wouldn't just be like, you know what, this is a topic I know nothing about, but let me troll them because I'm that sad. I mean, I guess the mental health issues is real. these days. I mean, if that makes them feel a little bit better about their pathetic selves.
And social media gives everyone a platform.
Yeah. People like us have to work for a living. So
why is it that veganism is such a polarizing topic, do you think?
Well, it's specifically, if you follow the logical conclusion to it, it's pointing a finger at people who are still paying money to people to rape and murder animals for them.
And that is triggering to them. They feel...
Yeah. Personally, like when people are like, you know, I was eating a meal with my folks a couple weeks ago. My aunt said, like, oh, like, is this bad for you that I'm eating this in front of you? I said, look, Aunt Laura, and everybody has an Aunt Laura, I think. But I said, Aunt Laura, I don't care what you eat. I said, you could have a basket of dead baby heads, just, you know, munch away on it. I don't care. And she's like, oh, how could you say that? I'm like, you're asking me my opinion about, you know, the cut up pieces of ass that you're eating. What did you expect me to say? Like, I really don't give a fuck, but is it gross? Yeah, man, you took a cow, you cut part of its ass off, you're chopping this shit up. Like, I don't care. Just like if you ate like a basket of baby heads, I would think it's kind of fucked up, but whatever, you know, like literally.
I'm here for the family, you know, I'm here for the family. I'm trying to have a nice meal here, Aunt Laura.
Yeah, but this is part of too, like I'm ex-military and I was punk rock. So like it, and I work as an RN. So I watch people, well, hopefully not watch, but I'm with dead and dying people all the time. I was in war. I could give a fuck. Like, I'm trying to make the world a better place, maybe move the chess pieces of life a little forward toward the less shit. But, you know, people like, especially easily triggered fucking, basically some easily triggered, very fragile dudes. It's very sad and funny to me at the same time. But I try not to pay much mind. I'm sure you're the same way because, you know, what am I going to do? Like, you know.
You can't change people. You can't force people to do anything. I have had people in my life that hypothetically, because I made the switch for health reasons. I read Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die. That was like a big piece in my life. I think I was already vegan at that time, and it was like an extreme reinforcement for myself. So shout out to Dr. Greger. Never met him, but I'd love to, and I'd love to go to one of his conferences one day. And there's people in my circle of life, close people that I love, that I definitely thought would benefit from leading a more plant-based life, and it did not work. We tried, me and my wife, and we tried to encourage them in a loving way, and they just rejected the whole thing to the point where, like, if I serve them anything in my house and until they know what it is and that it's vegan, then it's good, but as soon as they realize it's vegan, it's bad. Some people have this association with vegan being bad.
Well, I can totally understand that. And to be fair to them, for a long time, vegan products, other than vegetables, were kind of on the substandard side. Like
they were just too healthy.
Well, not just too healthy, but for the longest time in the 90s, when I'm thinking of vegan products like vegan ice cream, vegan burgers, vegan, candy stuff, it wasn't made by culinary geniuses. It was made by people who were trying to push us out of the, chopping up animals for food sphere. So because of that, you just had, I would say, in a lot of ways, inferior products. And then people like me would say, like, well, you can eat a burger and this tastes exactly like a burger. Truth is, no, it didn't fucking taste like a burger. It tasted like fucking ass. I mean, there was this stuff called Nature Burger back in the 90s, which was more like gathering twigs and rocks and pebbles, and you would get this in a bag at like a health food store, and then you were supposed to put it together like falafel and fry it. And it was like the healthiest burger, and there weren't Beyond Burger, Boca Burger, Impossible Burgers then, so it was the only game in town. It fucking sucked. And if I gave that to someone and say, here, would you like a vegan burger? Like, nobody except the most down for the cause would ever say yes. And those who tried it would just be like, oh, this shit sucks. So I get that the lasting legacy of those early days are going to still be around for some people, and that people are going to remember how much those products sucked. obviously people can understand that time does move on, that, this is now 30 years since that time. Ben and Jerry's ice cream, you can't tell the difference between if it has cow pus in it or not. Like it, but I get that a lot of people are still stuck in the past, and all we can do is help slightly nudge them forward. And then, whatever they're going to do, they're going to do. Not take it too personally, because it has nothing to do with you.
Exactly.
Or your wife, or, or me, and whatever I'm saying, it's them,
I completely agree. What was the turning point for you? Do you remember the day, the moment when you're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm never having another animal product?
So I remember the moment, but I don't know what day it was. It was sometime in August of 1992. I made the final choice. I originally went vegetarian because I was a punk rock kid, and my mom asked me what I was going to give up for Lent. And because I was kind of wanted to be a jerk, I was like, what is the most crazy thing I could tell this lady? The most
extreme thing.
And I said, I'm going to go vegetarian. And it's people listening to this wouldn't believe it. But back then that was like saying, I'm not going to breathe for 40 days. Family doctors said it was very unhealthy. People were like getting ready to visit me in the hospital. Like, it was that stupid. But, health evolves, and so does science. So now, fast forward 30 years later, we know that it's healthy. I got a punk rock pamphlet. I got a PETA pamphlet at a punk rock show sometime after I had started going vegetarian, again, by accident. And I was like, I'm actually accidentally doing something really good for the planet. Back then, we talked more about resources than climate change and pollution. It was about how polluting animal ag was and how many resources it uses versus if we just fed that stuff that we feed to animals that we're about to kill just to people, that we could feed everybody and not have any more hunger. And I thought, wow, as a punk rock kid, this is amazing as a concept. Fast forward a little bit to the summer, I had told people that I would never go vegan after I heard that word because I thought it was too extreme. But I got yet another PETA pamphlet at a punk rock show, and it talked about the connection between the meat and the dairy industry. And I realized at that point, wow, I'd been eating cheese sandwiches all this time to try to save cows and save lives and be better for the planet. And if those two industries are linked, then cheese sandwich, I might as well make it a cheeseburger. Like, what am I doing here? And it was at that point I had a binary choice. Do I live my values of trying to, do better for the planet and do better for animals? Or do I keep eating animals? And with that choice, I said, okay, on the one hand, it'll be extremely inconvenient and I'll probably never eat like good food again. But on the other hand, I can actually be my authentic self. And I just got lucky being presented with that choice at 19. I was in the perfect spot in my life to make that choice. I didn't have, a partner who was going to tell me no. I was a defiant punk rock kid. So the more difficult it might have looked, almost the better maybe. And then, I made that choice. People around me were unhappy with it. It did mean,
because you were still living at home at this point.
So I was back in college. So I would have been mostly in college, but then at home. My parents were not into it. We're not pushing. They pushed back just about a normal amount, I would say, on it. My parents were never oppressive, like trying to force me to do anything. It was more like, oh, that's kind of a, why the fuck are you doing that kind of thing? Well, this and this and this for the planet. Well, okay. And they just thought I would grow out of it. And, and here we are.
32 years later. Yeah. At what point did activism in vegan become one and the same, or was it just something that just the PETA pamphlets turned into you going to PETA marches? Is that something, I imagine it was all happening around the same time, PETA taking off in the 90s, yeah?
Yeah, I think it very much evolved for me in that in the beginning, after being vegan for probably less than a year, I started taking part in demonstrations, and I definitely wholeheartedly embraced activism, but then activism was standing around with a meat is murder sign. And I don't think anyone really got the message, and I don't think we delivered the message well. I think it was very much, vegan activism 1.0, or maybe not even 1, maybe like 0.3. And that's why if you look at the numbers back then, it'd be like for every year, 50 people would go vegan worldwide, maybe. And then I'm making this shit up, but it really was like that. It was a plateau. And then 500 people would say like, fuck this shit. Because it was difficult. Looking back on it now, why I didn't just eat more tofu and broccoli, I don't know. But, I didn't. I ate lots of PBJs, poorly made pasta. I tried different cuisines, but tofu and broccoli probably would have been a very solid choice had I made that choice. And then after college, I moved to Japan. I was in Japan for 7 years in bands. So activism was more through music. I was in a hardcore band there called Till I Die. And I would say the most interface I had with people talking about veganism was through that band, and we had a vegan song and talking and kind of talking it up on stage. Then through the military, I would say vegan activism. I mean, I would talk to guys about it because they would think it was just absolutely fucking bizarre, and they weren't wrong. I mean, to try to be vegan in a war zone is an act of insanity. And I don't. Yeah, that's really a whole story about that. But for me, the reason why I joined the military was very similar to why I went vegan in the first place. That whole trying to make the world a better place through PMA and a DIY culture. And if you want to do something, if you want to make the world better, you have to do something yourself. You can't just, hope other people do something, hope better into existence. You have to, hands-on do it yourself. And most of my friends, as you would probably guess, are, super ultra liberal, and in a lot of ways I am too. But their activism would have been like, let me just sit in my comfy chair and yell at the TV. And I don't think that does anything other than maybe it makes you feel better because you're yelling, and that's always fun. Then I've gotten out of the military. I was going to start a vegan restaurant, but timing was kind of fucked up. It was 2008. The world was on the verge of an economic collapse. Just realized the timing wasn't right. Fast forward a little bit, I went to Haiti to help in the earthquake relief because as a combat medic, that was kind of my field. And then that made me realize that, this hands-on being able to really positively impact someone's life, if I have to do a job for money, it might as well be that. And then I became a registered nurse, and I guess the rest is history. What I got into activism recently, I say recently, within the last 14 years, I started writing a book, which a picture behind me, Vegan Strong. I just kind of had a day where I felt kind of like bummed, like, man, I spent all this time going to vegan culinary school and getting ready for this restaurant, and it didn't become a thing. What could I do with all that knowledge and information? Then I thought, what I'll do is I'll write this book, and I'll make it like a field manual, something that I don't think the world has seen before, kind of a non-hippie vegan book. I'll write it like I was trying to send all the information that my 19-year-old self would have needed back in the 90s. Put that in a time capsule, and that's Vegan Strong. And that, after I put that out, that started to lead me toward doing mostly online activism, though I do events and stuff and go out stuff now. Occasionally I'll talk to patients about it, but it's mostly like a more of a gentle nudge.
It's a very fine line, yeah. They might just take it the wrong way. You never know. You never know how someone's going to react when you start opening up the V word. The V word makes people very afraid. I love how punk rock and trying to put PMA into action has dictated your entire life.
I would say a good amount of it, and also asking myself what would be the interesting choice.
Not the easy choice, but the interesting choice.
Yeah, moving to Japan right after college was definitely the most interesting choice at the time that was afforded to me. And then living there just became, strangely, as easy it is to live where you live and where I live now. And then deciding to, again, strangely, but the interesting choice at that point was to leave Japan because I was too comfortable there and my life would have been, I guess, too easy. And then to join the military, to switch my job from being an English teacher, one of the easiest jobs human could have had, to making way less than minimum wage to risk my life in very fun circumstances often, Why? Well, and now looking back at it, it was the most interesting choice. And now being 51 and in a hardcore band in LA, also, I would say, the most interesting choice. Not, if you watch financial videos on YouTube, not the smartest choice because bands are a money pit. But
tell me about it,
man. What a fun thing to do.
Tell me about it. As I remember, I'm getting ready for my Death to All tour that's coming up basically in 2 weeks at this point. By the time this comes out, I'll be well within the tour. But talking about expenses, it's something that you know, it sounds fun to be in a band, but there's stress before going on a tour. I'll say that.
Yeah. Just so much stress, but for all the kids, and by kids I mean anyone who's listening, you don't have to have musical talent to be in a band. Luckily, that spot is held by singers like myself or vocalists. You just have to be able to jump around and have fun.
Somewhat of a timing thing, maybe, unless you make that your style, to be off time.
But yeah, just do it. Like, most of the bands that I love from the 80s, they start off, think of the Germs that were such an influence. And you could definitely draw a straight line to influencing Nirvana. Those guys didn't play instruments when they started, like, at all.
It was just pure energy and an attitude.
Pure energy and determination. And there's something to be said for that. Even now in a digital age, there's something to be said for that authenticity and that having that drive and that passion.
That's true. How did you feel, or what did you do to fill the void between Till I Die to what you're doing right now?
So from Till I Die to, I'm in a band now called DFC, Death Follows Closely, for anyone who's interested, DFC Mosh on Graham and stuff like that. So it was hard, but there were a lot of bands and missteps in between. So there was bands before Till I Die. When I got back to the States, I was briefly in a band with Jim Winters from, I think he was in Earth Crisis and The Promise, and I think he was in Turmoil too. We played one show, maybe two. I think we played two shows. And then I bounced around different states and doing different jobs. I haven't been very far from the hardcore scene. My brother's in a band called All Else Failed from Philadelphia. So I'm always either at their shows, at other shows. I guess once this stuff gets in your blood, it's very hard to, get that access for hardcore,
How important is it for you, and do you do this? Does the vegan activism leak onto stage, and how does your bandmates react to that?
Luckily, the other guys are vegan, so it's very easy.
Was that like a mandate that they had to be, or did it just happen?
Yes-ish. We originally, when I pitched it to the other guys, is I want to be like Earth Crisis, but I want to do something different, like not just have the songs about veganism, number one. Number two, don't want to sound just like Earth Crisis, because Earth Crisis is back, and they're already doing Earth Crisis good enough, so why not just see, I very much love movies that aren't just sequels and rehashing the same stuff. And I like the same thing about music too. So I wouldn't want just the same thing. So the guys were down with that. So we're kind of trying to do we're metallic hardcore, but we're kind of all over the place. I like to think of it more like old Hatebreed, Throwdown. I love Slayer, like old Slayer, and just the heaviness of that. But I also like, Sam Hain, Misfits, like having a spooky edge. But I also, am not going to write like lyrics like rigor mortis, so it's not just going to be like, burning bodies, and it's going to usually have stuff about social issues or personal feelings about things. One of the things that I disliked about the kind of the youth crew movement is almost every song was about like being stabbed in the back, or being so distraught because your friend had a beer. Like, as you know, that's like the lamest shit ever. Being so like thinking that just having a beer is the end of the world. Like, my God, like what a privileged life you've led to think that that's the end of some like society like that. I don't know. Even being a straight edge kid, I think having the perspective, especially working with addicts and realizing that that a lot of that youth crew movement, that straight edge movement, a lot of that stuff was just way off base and just kind of silly, I guess. I mean, as much as I might love it, it's just silly. I mean,
it's definitely evolved from back in the day there. I see more and more people, and I've interviewed some people that like started being straight edge and then just really grew out of the whole movement of it and just stayed sober for the sake of they just don't want to drink, but it has nothing to do with what was happening back with the movement of the straight edge movement.
Yeah. And I mean, it being vegan, being straight edge, that, I also think it's maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say sad for people that are like, that's their everyday and that's all they talk about. Yeah. I would think though that maybe variety is the spice of life, and maybe like find different topics to talk about or different bands. Like, there's just so much out there. Like I could talk about straight edge a bunch, but I think at this point in my life, it's on autopilot. So like, I mean, we have a song about it, but other than that, like if anything, I just like to talk to kids about how you can, be your authentic self and be positive and leave it kind of general so people can get something awesome out of it and not just be like, oh, this is more finger pointy bullshit, which nobody needs, nobody wants that. And yeah.
I agree, and it is good to be your authentic self, because it is a thing that is sold to young kids that you need to drink to have fun and all these things, but that's a fallacy. That it lowers inhibitions and lets people feel a bit more comfortable when you have a few drinks. But it's okay to just be you too, and I think that's really like sober consciousness and sober culture is something that's really coming, and it's not straight edgeness. It's just people that are sober curious and people that are just young kids aren't drinking as much as they used to. It's a very different culture nowadays than it was back in the 90s, for sure.
I think my general perspective is less attack and more just it's okay to be sober and it's okay to be vegan. Like, I don't think our culture, even though obviously with climate change and stuff like that, we need people to not be supporting animal ag. We need to move past that. But from a practical standpoint, my whole take is just it's okay to not go down that road and just being okay with other lifestyles. I mean, I think this whole thing could be extended to a bunch of different communities.
Totally.
And just say like, hey, like you do you, guy or gal. Like, I think that's part of what punk rock is about too, just accepting that people can do their own thing and not feeling threatened by it. I mean, and if anything, I think it's a very sad that people are threatened just by people being themselves, and they really need like, everybody to be doing the same thing. It's like, you know what, if I don't like it, I'm just not going to go support it. I won't go on their page. I'm not going to leave them hateful comments. I'll just be like, whatever, bro, like you do you. Yeah.
Back to the book. Talk to me about writing. You mentioned you were an English teacher, so you must be proficient at the English language.
I'm proficient at the Englishes.
Writing is difficult, though. So talk to me about, was there a moment when you decided to start doing this and then you realized hypothetically that you bit off more than you thought you could chew, and then getting over that hurdle to finish the book?
Well, so I'm on book 4 now.
Nice.
So the book's behind me, Vegan Strong. When I first started Vegan Strong, I think I didn't think it was going to be that hard until I realized, this is like the worst assignment in college, except I've given it to myself. Yeah. I'm going to be my harshest critic.
Exactly.
And I'll never feel that it's completed or good enough. And that was kind of a hard hurdle to get over. And for those who are writing, and I think the same can be said for being in a band, people are going to want to keep refining something. But there's a certain point that I think you've refined it enough and you just have to kick it out there. And that was Vegan Strong. Then after Vegan Strong, I was thinking, how do I follow that up? And I know a lot of people in the plant-based vegan sphere who I feel like often people tend to churn out the same book and package it a different way. And I think fitness influencers, and I think, often people in general just kind of repeat themselves. And I didn't want to have Vegan Strong 2.0, at least not right after Vegan Strong. So then I wrote a book called Adventures of Sergeant Picky, which was like a happy book for kids, which had a little bit of plant-based veganism in it, but mostly just a picture book for kids. Because when I looked up vegan kids books, they were all some sad-ass shit. And if you're a little kid, man, you don't need some sad-ass shit. Life is amazing. Like as adults, we know that, yes, there's some sad stuff in life. Yeah, death sucks. Yeah, there's, war is horrific. But at 5, do you need to be given that? Like, no. Then later into the pandemic, and I think your audience would appreciate this, I was in a dark place, as most of us were during the pandemic, and especially working in the hospital with dead and dying. And I was like, you know what? I want to write my last book about veganism, but I want it to be a horror novel that explains veganism through horror fiction, and that's what Dead Meat is. Dead Meat, I think it's like, I'm so proud of it. That was when you were talking about, was it difficult to write? Writing your first novel, and then, it's all the thoughts I had about Vegan Strong, like it'll never be good enough, but even worse because it's fiction, whereas Vegan Strong is. I think Vegan Strong is fun, but it's nonfiction. Whereas Dead Meat, it had to be both interesting, it had to have a good pace to it. I'm trying to talk about veganism, but not talk directly about veganism, and also not be preachy. So there were a lot of goals I was setting for myself. And lastly, I wanted it to be the most brutal fucking like baseball bat to the face experience you could have, and make it scary too. And I would like to think that Dead Meat does that. The proof is in the vegan pudding. One of my coworkers who I'm friends with, I gave him the manuscript and he said it gave him nightmares. So
nice.
I set that as the bar for myself, like scary as fuck and bleak and brutal. And then for me, like as a fan of the genre, as you probably are too, like I wanted it just a feeling of like dread in your stomach, like when you're watching John Carpenter's The Thing, and you just have this feeling there's no fucking way this is going to end well.
I love that. How do you sneak vegan into that without giving away too much?
So I can give away the premise because it's on the blurb cover of the book. Basically, after yet another pandemic, somehow all animal life forms on the planet die off, and people are left with, well, what the fuck do we do? We can't just eat plants. So the government sponsors a way to round up the undesirables and put them in the animal agriculture mills and make human milk and human meat out of them. And as fucked up as people might think that is, I'm just going to say, bro, there's no reason you're eating animals now. Like, you don't need to rape or murder an animal now. Like, you're doing that for funsies now. So what's to say you wouldn't be, eating a baby later for funsies? Like, Am I here to judge you? No. I mean, when I was in the military, like, yeah, I was a medic, but my unit killed lots of fucking people. So am I trying to be like, say that I'm a better person? Like, for sure not. And am I trying to say someone's bad? No. I had a friend while we were deployed who would do this trick he would call fishing for dogs. He would get like a little noose and put it on the ground, put some food, and the little puppy, usually puppy dogs, would come by and be like, they would get it. Then he would fucking hang them and kill these dogs. Am I here to say that guy was bad? No, he was a better person than most people I'm gonna know. So take that for what it's worth. I'm just saying there's no reason, justifiable reason, for anybody to give people money to murder and rape animals. You know, it's a very close in proximity thing to be able to do that to people. And I don't think dead meat is as absurd a concept as people would like to think it is. I mean, I would love it to be a reality where people are like, no, under no circumstance would I ever do something that hurt other people for no reason. I don't know. I mean, the reason why we haven't fixed most of our societal problems, whether it's addiction or homelessness or inequality, is just because people don't give a fuck about each other. And I don't think it's that far of a stretch to say they wouldn't be also killing people and eating them for no reason either, even though we have all these plant foods. That's
a lot of
thoughts.
people don't take the difficult option as you have in your life.
And I think another thing to consider is that it's not, I mean, you know, it's not difficult in maybe in 1990 or when the hippies did it in the 60s, you know, you were doing like I did back in the day, eating like a broccoli sandwich because you could literally find nothing else like other than 2 pieces of bread and broccoli and like a family event. We're so far beyond that, you know, we're talking the difference between like a cart and like a Mercedes Benz. Mm-hmm. Like veganism has completely changed. The game is all changed. So yeah, I mean, take it for what it is.
If someone is listening to this and is on the fence about leaning more into a plant-based lifestyle, what would be the first steps for you? Your suggestions to them?
So, firstly, I would say, don't try to, you know, go all at once. Take it easy. Take it day by day. I think self-judgment and making stuff like this into some kind of like, I don't know, like Hunger Games kind of thing is unnecessary. So I would just say, hey, slowly replace the animal-based foods in your recipes with plant-based foods. For example, chili, other than the carne of chili con carne, the whole thing is vegan by default. And then just use Impossible Meat or Beyond Meat or whatever is at your local supermarket and replace that with that. Or just don't even put the meat in at all. You're missing nothing. Spaghetti, same thing. Instead of the instead of the animal-based meatballs or sausage, I would just put Impossible Beyond. And dinner, you know, I could pretty much any recipe that you could come up with, you could easily have a plant-based option for the one part of it. The only difference would be if all you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner is steak, you know, that's going to be a little bit harder. The good news is that most humans, even the so-called carnivores that are my trolls lately, don't do that. Most people don't do that. Why? Because it's very unhealthy. Like, and as a registered nurse who works on a cardiac floor, I could tell you, eating excessive animal products is highly unhealthy. You know, and is it a question of trying to live forever or not? No, it's a question of trying to live the best you. If excess animal products is linked to cardiovascular disease and is causing strokes and heart attacks, and it's also eating animal products is linked to diabetes and obesity, why not take it a little easy on yourself and eat a less shitty diet? Like, again, as a registered nurse, I'm just giving suggestions. You know, are you ever going to be my patient? No, I work for the Veterans Affairs. I only work with veterans, and I would assume that nobody listening to this is ever going to be my patient. Most of my patients are Vietnam vet era. You know, and they're not getting an earful about veganism. So it's not like you're ever going to have to like bump into me in real life at a work situation and then explain yourself. And you don't have to explain yourself to anyone. I'm just saying, eat a little bit healthier, you know, kind of open your mind, read about the facts that are out there, that at this point, the American Dietary Association, at this point, a majority of doctors, at this point, nobody's trying to say anything but, well, yeah, it'd be a little bit healthier for you to be plant-based. Is it going to mean that you're going to live forever? No. Is it going to mean that you're never going to get sick? No. I mean, like, germs don't care what your identity is. Like, germs will get you, you know, that's a not science-based thing to think that just because you're vegan, you're not going to get sick or you won't die. But will it be healthier? For sure. You know, are there people that live to their hundreds that still, you know, eat meat and smoke? Yeah. I mean, that does exist. But amazing genes are amazing genes. But a majority of us are not going to be that 1/10 of 1% that really anything they did, they'll be fine. Majority of us, we need to stay within bounds of like good dietary habits of exercise and stuff like that. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's never exercised before and then walks out and runs a marathon. Most of us, though, that will be a hard thing to do.
Absolutely. Bill, thank you so much for all of your insightful thoughts. I really, really liked a lot of stuff you said there. I agreed with a lot of it. I do not showcase this a lot on the podcast, but I definitely live a lot of this. So I'm happy to have you come on and be the expert in the field to share it with everyone. Thank you so much. I had a great time. I hope go check out his stuff, people. Vegan Strong, Dead Meat, the child's book that's behind his head, that Sergeant.
Adventures of Sergeant Piggy. And because we're obviously this is a metal podcast, you please check out the EP, Drug Free Crew, DFC, Mosh at Instagram. We're on Bandcamp, also DFC Mosh. If you like heavy music, we're definitely heavy. I'd go as far as to say heavy as fuck, but it's hard for me to describe my own band and say that and not try to chuckle a little bit.
Hell yes, do it, people. Bill, thank you so much. I appreciate you very much. Massive cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening to 1980 that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was an intense conversation. I love all of Bill's ideals. I love how aggressively he attacks them. I am a vegan myself, as we spoke about throughout the episode, but I'm not a vegan activist as much as Bill is, and I commend him for wearing all of his colors on his sleeve and for shooting out into the world everything that he believes, and he's fighting for it. I think it's an important cause. I think it's super interesting how many ways he has found to talk about all of this, all of the books that he's writing. I think it's super, super interesting, and I cannot wait to finally meet Bill face-to-face one day and to see everything else that he's going to keep doing, keep pushing his platform of being vegan is the best way in the world. I think it's super interesting, and I'm excited to see what else he comes up with. The Vox&Hops podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a killer month of August. That's right. I am going on vacation. I am taking a month off. I will be back in September with brand new episodes, which I recorded on my recent tour with Death to All. That's right. Vox&Hops will return with brand new episodes on September 5th. But until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox&Hops heads.